Okay, so here we go. This video is about the effects on the environment from the Australian gold rushes. And you can already see in the picture here that things are not looking as they should. We've got a lot of bare earth and not many trees. And that's a result of many years of mining, particularly gold mining. So let's have a look at some of the other effects. And you can see here in this picture, you can see I'm pointing out here a creek or a riverbed, and it's sort of been stripped back and it's not looking too healthy, and not a lot of trees and vegetation around near the riverbanks there. That's basically due to the fact that lots of miners used to pan for gold and dig for gold around near rivers and creeks, and this is the result that unfortunately has occurred. Now, most of the information that I'm going to talk about comes from this website down the bottom here, the SBS Gold website. It's a fantastic place to go and look for things. I'm just going to try and simplify the information that's there, but when you're looking for further examples, that'd be a great place to start. Okay, so here it is. The gold rushes had a mostly negative effect on all of these parts of the environment. Native plants and trees, first of all. Secondly, waterways. Thirdly, the land and the soil. And fourthly, native animals. So they're the things we're going to focus on in this video. Let's look at them one at a time. We'll start with, there we go. We'll start with native plants and trees. And of course, the miners needed to cut down lots of trees, firstly to make sure that they had room to dig their mine shafts and set up their equipment, but they also needed the wood to make tools. They then had to cut down more trees so that they could build huts and clear further land for all sorts of other reasons as well. And so deforestation is what we call that, when many trees, forests are removed, and that certainly happened a lot during the gold rush times. But the second thing, you can see the picture at the bottom there, is that many of the people coming from overseas brought with them weeds, and you can see in the picture there's some blackberry, which is still a problem in many parts of Australia. It's very hard to get rid of, and that blackberry was actually introduced during the gold rush period. It's still around today, unfortunately. Okay. Waterways. Well, as I said before, the gold miners loved to use water. They needed the water to help them wash the soil to get the gold out. And so you can see in this picture, there's a whole lot of problems that have been caused by the mining. Firstly, you can see around the banks here that the soil's collapsed, and all that mud and all that soil has been washed down into the creek and into the stream, and that just carries on for miles and miles down the river and pollutes everything. And in order to satisfy their need for water, the miners also used to build dams or creeks, build dams or divert creeks, so that they had the water when they needed it and where they needed it. But that, of course, created problems as well to our waterways. So not fantastic. All right. The land and the soil. Well, this is pretty obvious. You can see in the picture here that there's lots of soil being dug up. There's been mine shafts, obviously, all around here, and all of that soil and dirt and rock has been pulled up to the surface, and often the top layer of soil was removed and washed away, and that meant it was really hard for plants and trees to grow once that top layer of soil had gone. They also left these big ugly mounds of dirt and rubble, and you can still see sometimes in some parts of Australia, you can see those big mounds where gold has been mined for. And just down the bottom here, you can see salinity has become a problem for new plant growth. When you strip away the top layer of soil and the vegetation, then the salt comes up from below and can cause real problems for plants to grow. Finally, we're going to look at native animals and how the gold rushes affected them. So firstly, up the top here, they lost their habitats due to mining and clearing of forests. And also, of course, the problems with pollution in the waterways. That would have been very difficult for animals that lived in the water. Miners' dogs and cats became predators. So they were brought along by the miners as company, but often they escaped out into the bush and they ate poor little native animals, just like this little eastern hare wallaby down here. And very sad news that this little creature was extinct by 1890, so just a few years after the gold rushes. We no longer have that animal in Australia. Very sad. And of course, just like the weeds were introduced, the miners brought with them some other animals from overseas. We had rabbits, which are not native to Australia. They were introduced in the 1850s, so when the gold rushes began, and they've become a major problem, a major pest throughout Australia. But there were others that caused problems as well, like buffalo and foxes. All sorts of other animals came in and created problems, and our native animals now had to compete with them for food, and in some cases became the prey of those introduced species. So, not a pretty picture, but there is some good news. How long did these effects last? Well, in many cases, the land and the waterways have now recovered. So trees have grown back, and plants and other animals have returned to their habitats, and rivers and streams have returned to the way that they were before. So that's really great, and that's taken some time, but it's getting back to normal in many parts of Australia. But I guess the big problem is that introduced plants and animals are still around, and they're still causing problems all these years later. So even though the environment has recovered somewhat, there are still some issues. And so it's up to you to think about how significant is this? How significant is this change to the environment? And how does it compare with some of the other things that you've been looking at in your teams? Go well.